Hello, everyone. Welcome back to OTD Military History. It's been about a month since we've done a live stream hangout. Nothing really planned for this one. Anybody watching out there, any questions? Got a few things on my mind, as not unsurprising. I might notice the background's a little different, trying out a green screen for the first time. Might not go well. It's attached to my chair and I've been having some troubles. So I'm going to see how long it lasts. And it's been crashing my computer, so I'm trying not to move too much because my computer is not meant for this kind of thing for a very long time. So give it a shot and see how it goes. Yeah, so not a lot going on last month, a bit here. Working away. I've been working away on videos and other work, research project, working with the RCAF Foundation, like I have been for the past couple of years, doing a ton of stuff for them on social media. So if you don't follow them and across pretty much all of them, you can find them and lots of good stuff that we're trying to do and promote the RCAF, past, present, future. So check that out. I'm involved in that. So it's some good stuff. And we have some other like Google Art and Culture stories that are coming out. Those are pretty cool. Looking at some different topics and different stuff. So I've been working a lot on that. But for the channel, mostly been trying to focus on events that are coming up in hitting their 80th. Sorry, I'm already moving too much. With the 80th anniversaries coming up related to the Second World War, obviously, with Iwo Jima is coming. I've already got a video 2 out already, one that's much shorter for patrons and YouTube channel members. So again, that is a reminder. If you can join, please do. Just a couple of bucks a month, especially Canadian. It's not much if you're outside Canada. It really makes a huge difference in helping me and keeping everything going. So I've been working on that, looking at different different primary sources that I've been able to find online, as is I'm wanting to do, as I've done some videos like that in the past. So this one I found is super interesting. I don't want to talk about it too much because the video is coming out. I might move the date. I'm not sure yet. But it's already up for patrons and YouTube channel members. So you can see that if you're interested. It's a pretty cool one because it's from a Navy lieutenant commander who was off the coast while the bombardment was going on in a D+1. And he gave an interview 3 days after D-Day. So stuff's really fresh. Excuse me. In his mind, and he gave multiple interviews. There's 2 in the National Archive. They're both pretty much the same, so I just did the first one, but I was able to pair it with footage and everything. It's fantastic, and been poking around that and been looking at some other footage of Iwo Jima. Like the amount of footage taken on that one, again, not surprising, given the American resources that are put into capturing those battles in 45, but just how well the quality of this stuff is. The quality of these videos is fantastic. Some of them not so much, and they capture some stuff you don't see elsewhere. But it was all put together in, I think, after the war, or maybe just towards the end. I'm not sure the actual release date, but To the Shores of Iwo Jima is what it's called. And then some of that stuff is used in Sands of Iwo Jima with John Wayne and all that good stuff. So I've been thinking a lot about Iwo Jima and obviously coming up with Okinawa. So I'm going to try and find a source that's related to Okinawa that's, unexamined much, just like this interview. I found hardly anything on this guy out there. So, and he was a reporter. So it was really interesting to not find much out there. So hopefully I can find something good for Okinawa. Been digging on back towards some more Canadian stuff. Been digging on Operation Veritable, right? So the push into the Rhineland. Which has always been a fascinating one for me, especially over the last couple of years, because I got to go there 2 springs ago now, which was fantastic with Dave Patterson, and hit all of those sites. And it's a fantastic area to visit, and that part of the Netherlands as well. Nijmegen and area, because that's Market Garden territory, right, with the 82nd Airborne landing outside the city and then fighting their way into Nijmegen and controlling the bridges and everything. So you get that story. And I found a really cool photo. I'm just trying to green screen. See, I moved too much. That's another problem with these things on a chair. Is a found some really cool photos from, I think they're January or December, 44, 45, of the gliders that were just left in the fields outside Nijmegen. So I'll share those at some point. I was trying to get the exact location. I was having trouble, and because I'm trying to find as best I can. I mean, there's some good stuff out there. Is aerial photos of Operation Veritable and past, past Clave, basically, or Kleve, I think is how it's said in German. And I've been there. It's not a big place. None of these places really are. Kleve was flattened pretty much because of Operation Veritable on the night of the 7th, 8th February. So I've been tracking that and looking at some photos related to that. And I want to do a big thing on Moylan Wood, which is a small patch of land that was a tough fight. And it literally took, flamethrowers to clear the Germans out. And I'm starting to see why it was such a tough one, based on the research I'm doing. And I was digging through the 7th Canadian Infantry Brigade's war diary for February, and there's no planning to take Moylan Wood, hardly any. So that'll be in the video. There's British involvement there as well. The Scots go through there. I forget the regiment off the top of my head, and the brigade, I think it's 153rd. I'm probably wrong. If anybody knows, let me know. But it'll be right in the video. I'm gonna get it right in the video. But that's what I've been working on too. So that doesn't come until the anniversary of that is until mid-February. Veritable begins on the 8th, like I said. I already have tons of stuff on the channel on Veritable, lots of live streams. Generally speaking, one with Jesse from Real Time History, and then Dave Grebstad did one on the fire plan, which to me is just fascinating. It was just so much artillery put into this one, and you can see that in all the documents. They talk about this stuff like the biggest we got and all that good stuff. So a lot of that. So that's what's coming up, and then I guess we'll just move through. Hopefully I can do something on plunder and the crossing of the Rhine, and I found this amazing piece of footage as well related to that, and I'll do something with that too. It's a bit shocking, but it's a fantastic piece of footage and telling the dangers of war from unexpected ways. So that'll be coming up as well. I was thinking about that one today. There's so much going on. So much I could cover, and I can only do so much by myself. And I'm no film documentarian. I'm a historian first, so these things take me a long time. So see, we got a few questions already, so that's good. Let's see, Jim. Hello, welcome. I have heard and read that Canadian troops, airmen, sailors, etc., were not looked upon with much respect by the British. Is that true? Depends. That really depends. Where and when. I mean, I've done quite a bit on recently, especially on number 6 group, RCAF, the bomber command guys, and the locals got along really, really well with them. As far as I can tell, of course, there's a few issues with, let's say, horizontal liaisons, I guess. There was always an issue with that, and a little bit of crime and things like that, and just drunken stupidity. But they got along really well with them because they were mostly in Yorkshire for a good chunk of the war. That was number 6 group's base. It was Yorkshire, so they're in that area. So it was pretty good. I mean, Army's there for a long time. They are just tired of being there. They didn't sign up to sit around and hang out in southern England, right? They wanted to take the fight to the Germans. So there's, I mean, again, more of the same thing with the aviators. A lot of training in areas like Salisbury Plain and things like that, and in the south, and being on coastal defense, and a ton of that. And of course, it's the same sort of thing with anywhere else, right? They get kind of tired of being there. The people kind of get tired of having them around. So I wouldn't, broad strokes say, they're not respected, because I don't think that's true. It just depends, right? Depends who it is, what's happening at the time of the war. And I mean, like after things like Dieppe, they were definitely not disrespected. And the sailors, I mean, it's different. They're not always there that long. The ratings guys, they're not there very long. They're only there for a short period, right? Running the convoys. So that kind of thing. So I wouldn't say that as generally speaking to say that they were disrespected. I haven't really seen that. And not from the writings I've seen. It doesn't really come across like that either. So So, Chris, hey, Chris, our Archer expert. Was 7th Brigade given much advance notice of the assignment? No, of Moylan Wood. Originally, it was yes. So it was supposed to be taken by, one of the Scottish regiments. Well, it was supposed to be a brigade objective-ish. It did not go well. So no, they are not given much advance warning. Again, I probably didn't come across well when I said that, but I'm not like blaming them for the lack of planning. It's just that's how it went. Like that was not supposed to be. Sorry, green screen's already driving me a little crazy. It's not supposed to be something that they're fighting in. That's not supposed to be their area. Their area is elsewhere. And they get shifted down there to take care of it, and it just doesn't go well. And I found a really cool map actually that explains kind of why it's such a difficult thing to do. Because, sorry, it's gonna move a little bit again. Because it's hilly, and the rest of the area around there is not so hilly, and that causes an issue. And the German, fanaticism to defend the area, right? It's paratroopers. The famed Fallschirmjäger, as I often say. So that's a big part of it. And they know that this is it. Like, this is the back against the wall, right? Once they're to the Rhine, that's it, right? You got to get across, and then it's just open from there. And that's what happens, right? So it's tough fighting. The weather is terrible. So that all plays in part of this. Again, I'm not blaming like 3rd Div or 7th Brigade or even the battalions themselves. I mean, they try different things. It doesn't work. They keep trying different stuff to take it. Again, depends on who you read, but it's a fascinating one. And yeah, there's hardly any time because this launches on the 16th. The Scots go in 2 days before that, 3 days before that. And that's just right after coming up after the initial advance across those open flooded plains around the rest of the area on the other side of Clave. So yeah, it's a fascinating one, and I'll get into the nitty gritty, and hopefully I can kind of see. Well, I know some of the dates of when like this is the op order go, that kind of thing. And it's a short period, it's a quick turnaround. But yeah, it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of planning for Veritable with the amount of time they had. Right, it was supposed to be launched earlier. It was pushed back because of the bulge. So they've been planning Veritable for a very long time. That's why they're able to stockpile so much ammunition. Like it's crazy to talk about that with Dave Grebstad about this. Just the amount. And some of the videos of it are crazy of the amount they have. So I mean, these things have an issue, and this is why there's an operational pause in Veritable, which becomes Blockbuster because there's just all kinds of trouble. And the Germans start throwing reinforcements in as well. The enemy gets a vote. So we'll be digging into that one pretty good. I mean, I think it's such an interesting one because it shows the difficulty of the Rhineland. It shows the Canadian Army's ability to learn super fast and to keep going and to keep fighting despite the high casualties that get taken, especially there. It's such a small. It's an 18-horse golf course, I think, 18-hole golf course. Sorry. It's a limited area, but it's brutal. Any consideration on doing more Plan Red? Not really. Not because it's too sensitive. It's just I think it's been done enough for now. I mean, both Canada. I saw something today. I was looking at something else and it just popped up. I don't even know how that happened, but I just don't. How do I say this? It just not interests me that much. I mean, both had plans to do it. Obviously, they go nowhere. But in the near war period, both sides, quote unquote, have plans for this. Both sound ridiculous and fantastical to me, but what can you do, right? I mean, it's just not something I've planned on doing. We're at the 80th of 45, and that's my specialty and all that good stuff. So. And when I try to do little smaller subjects like that, they tend not to do well on YouTube. And again, I don't have to tell you about that and how that all goes around here. Yeah. Operation Varsity. Yeah, that's another one I'm looking at as well. Because I've been to the area of that as well. It's a fascinating little area. high casualties again as well. I mean, I think we had a discussion, I don't remember when, a while back now, about airborne ops and how dangerous they are in the Second World War, right? Like how many don't have high casualties, right? There's none. I don't think we came to none. And then we were trying to think generally about it. And there's just not a lot that don't have high casualties. Green screen's already driving me crazy. Because I can't sit still. Yeah, so that's interesting. I've been to that ground, the Canadian spot, the DZ, somebody's like backyard now. It's kind of funny because they just kind of like, what are you looking at? It's just an empty field. But yeah, that's an interesting one too, and there's tons of footage of it. So definitely plan on putting something together that fits with Plunder, right? Because they're together. They have to be. That's the lesson for Market Garden. So yeah, Plunder starts first, actually. So yeah, it's another fascinating one, and there's tons of resources on it. So definitely something I'll try to get together. Right, just I know February is going to be a bit of a busy month for me. Same with March. So I'll try to do what I can. Probably not something too long, but something. Yeah, it's that is the U.S. plan is red. We're playing red, and then Canada's defense plan number 1 or something like that, or something like that. I can't remember. But yeah, I mean, there's both have a plan. It's just that, a plan. Yeah, the Canadians were better paid. Kind of the hierarchy goes, and the Americans are the best paid, Canadians, and then the Brits, who most of them aren't there anyway. So it's just how that went, and the better you can dish out, the more you can get, and you can put that as however you want. It's just, and why the difference? It's just how it went, based on budgets, based on what's the standard? No, they're not really calling it that at the time, but standard of living and the value of the dollars and things like that, right? That's just how it was done. The Americans just paid better because they could, and same with the Canadians. They could just pay better, and the British Army doesn't have a good tradition of paying high wages, right? The King shilling. So I mean that continues into the Second World War. Yes, got the mattress thingy going. Yeah, gotta rep my mattress thingy. Yeah, it's a cool one. Also part of Veritable. It's part of the pepper pot. What that is, I was looking at some of that today. It's wild. Just basically take anything that's not field artillery and just kind of point it at a direction in an area of the enemy where you think there's defenses or well-trodden trails or roads or whatever, and just open up. I think the pepper pot to begin Veritable was 6 hours. And this is outside of, your 25 pounders and your heavy guns and all that other stuff. These are the mortars, anti-aircraft, the land mattress, heavy machine guns, everything. You just kind of point it at a direction and just keep going. And it had massive impact at Veritable. It was very helpful. So yeah, that's another thing I was trying to think. I thought I hadn't seen footage of the pepper pot at Veritable, but it turns out it was heavier field guns. It was the 5.5s, I think. And the quality is not the greatest because it's kind of dark. So it just wasn't the best quality footage. But I mean, it's still interesting. I was going to try to make a video out of the idea of the pepper pot so I could talk about the artillery and Veritable and all that stuff. And maybe I still could, but I just thought I had footage of that somewhere or I'd seen it somewhere. But I probably can look again, but not off the top of my head. Sorry, just catching up here. Yeah, there's a lot to learn. It's I've been doing this for almost 10 years now, full time, and been reading since I was a kid. And I still find things every day. I'm like, oh my God. Like I was finding stuff on Yugoslavia a couple of weeks ago about a small, limited. I still can't even find out necessarily the amount of troops involved. And all the sources were either in Croatian or Serbian, which I don't read, and I'm not even really sure the difference between the two languages. Not in a mean way. I'm ignorant and don't know the difference. And I just couldn't get through it. And it was this limited German counterattack that was successful right around the time of the one in Alsace. I forget the name off the top of my head. Northwind. Right around the same time, but I'm not sure how big it was. And, it was the Yugoslav and, the partisans, quote unquote, which doesn't really feel like a correct term for them in early 45 because they're feeling full like divisions. So it's another interesting part of the war that I know next to nothing about. And my language skills aren't up to par, but I can keep digging. And there's always stuff to be learning. This war is massive. And then been looking at things like in Burma. I keep finding photos of them bombing the supply lines, especially in 45. This time in 45, just trying to cut them off. So there's a lot going on there too. So it's a massive conflict. And I've heard people say they know everything, and that's just impossible. And it's just, to me, it's an arrogance to say that. You can't. No one can ever learn everything about this conflict because we're still finding things, and it's just how it's going to be for a very long time. Yeah, they still had reserves. They still had armor too in the Rhineland, and some of it that had retreated because the Canadians get almost wiped out and destroyed by some German armor attacks in the same area on the Gotch, or I can never remember the German pronunciations off the top of my head. Gotch Cleave, as we'd say in English, the road that connects those two, which was also the jump off point for Blockbuster. There's a German armored counterattack that almost gets them out of those positions. It's a difficult fight because it's wide open territory, so it turns into a big slogging match for both sides. And it's another fascinating one to look at too, especially that later stuff. You get some attention with the the early days of Veritable and the flooded areas, which is actually a small part, not all of it, right? It's just the area around the Rhine, because the advance kind of moves off of the Rhine a little bit because the river kind of takes a curve. Obviously, they're pushing to the Rhine, but it kind of widens, so they have more land to cover. And they're working on controlling it as well as this goes on, right? Because that's what slows Operation Grenade, the U.S. Ninth Army's part in this of this pincer movement. It's slowed down because of flooding. So it's a fascinating one. The Germans are using whatever they can to their advantage and are causing mass destruction in the process of their own land. I mean, it's fine now. It's a beautiful area. I love going to the Rhineland. It's great. But yeah, they're hanging on, but they're doing everything they can because there's just, they're getting to this fanatical stage. Sorry, another question. Was there much thought given in Allied High Command to clearing the Scheldt estuary immediately after? No. That is a massively controversial topic, especially with the passing of the 80th anniversary of Market Garden, which is what leads directly to things like Operation Veritable and the Nijmegen salients and all this stuff that's interconnected. And I just did a video. Not a lot of people have seen it because it had some copyright stupid issues. So I think it's been throttled a little bit, but like these raids and patrols, and it goes on for months. And Capelle Severe is one of them. Operation Elephant, that's part of it. So they're just kind of holding the line, basically. But no, there is no major thought given to it. Monty's able to convince Eisenhower that Market Garden will work and it'll get us home faster. It'll end this war faster and keep promising before the end of 44, which I'm not even convinced. Had everything gone perfectly, that still would have happened. But no, there's no planning. Bertram Ramsey gives this crap to some people about it. I mean, he's high up, obviously, but one voice sometimes isn't even enough. And then it turns into a huge mess. Literally, I kept thinking of this, looking at all the footage and photos of the flooding of the Rhineland and how the Scheldt gets the attention, for the river, the water rats, as the 3rd Division's called, the Canadian 3rd Division. It happens again in the Rhineland. I mean, it's more 2nd Division that time, in the really bad stuff, but it's got a lot of parallels. It's small chunks of land, built up areas that you have to fight and take. Very similar in a lot of ways, because there's a man-made human border there doesn't mean the land is any different in the area. It's all low-lying. It just happens to be connected to the Rhine this time. But no, they really, fumbled that one. I don't think they could have, even with how things had gone when they took Antwerp. I think they were really at the edge of their limit, and logistics all plays into this, and it's a massive thing that a lot of people, when Market Garden comes up, they get offended, they get angry, they get their backs up, and then you just can't have a rational discussion about, all the boring things that go into this and all of that, and why there's problems. And you can argue both sides about this stuff of, you could do logistics only, you could do ego only, you could do everything on all of this stuff, and go on for days and days and days and years and books and movies and videos and stuff forever, which we have been doing. But no, there's no plan at all. I know that's the long answer, but you asked a historian, that's what you're going to get. So I do want to just give a quick shout out to my patrons and YouTube channel members. You guys are the reason why I can keep this going. It's good to have the support. Always great to have more if you're able. Means a lot to have it. I try to share as much as I can on there as early as I can with videos, especially. Again, just one person team. It's hard to get things done quickly, especially when I don't really have a ton of skill in that whole video area. I'm learning, but I still don't have the best stuff. I don't have the best software. It is what it is. But it just takes some time. But yeah, so if you can, that would be, any support you can give is great. And I try to give extra things on there that I don't give anywhere else. Things my research, even if it's not even related to work that's OTD necessarily, I still share sometimes, and lots of primary sources, and there's lots of good stuff out there, especially when I get into the archives, right? You really don't see that stuff anywhere else, really. Sorry, I'm just going to go back here a second. Sorry, I'm just getting caught up here. Brad, you've applied to do a talk at Laurier this May. No, I have not. This is probably an offline conversation, but I don't know if I will for numerous reasons that I don't really want to discuss in a public forum, if that makes sense. Maybe I'll think about it. It's a big hassle for me to get all the way down there. Yeah, so maybe we can take that as an offline discussion, but I'd rather not have video of it. Yes, I will launch a crusade against Cold War channel. Oh wow, okay. Yeah, he did. I've been to his grave. At Grebstad. That's an emotional cemetery. I mean, they all are, but that one especially, because they brought them all in from Germany, right? There's one, as far as we know, or one marked grave of one Canadian soldier. I'm saying soldier specifically, not using the blanket term, an actual army soldier buried in Germany at the Reichswald Cemetery. The rest were brought to Grebstad, the ones that they found, because that was a directive from Krier, who's commander, 1st Canadian Army. He didn't want any Canadians resting on what was enemy soil. But there's one, and I looked in the records, and I have no idea how that happened. It might have just been a mistake. The body was not unidentifiable. Maybe I can find out more, but I'm not really sure how that happened. But been there and seen it. So yeah, I've seen them both. It's another area I really wish I could go to for the 80th, but that's not going to happen, unfortunately. Yeah, you can spend multiple lifetimes on just this one conflict and never run out. Yeah, the displaced persons, that's so many sad stories, and so much going on there, and things like reprisals, and it's nasty stuff, and depressing, and yeah. Oof, yeah, it goes on for a long time too. We still feel the effects of it today. Yeah, the more you read, the less you know. Yeah, exactly. Right, like they said, that Burma bombing stuff. Right, like I'm learning about all that, and the planning that went into that, and that's hitting the the supply routes. That doesn't include everything else. That's just hitting the supply routes in this supposedly remote area that didn't seem so remote, right, with all this infrastructure in it. So it's just, you always are learning and changing perceptions and gaining new insights. It's fascinating. That's a good question. Kind of. I mean, there's some of that going on. I found this document. I gotta rip it out of the war diary and share it because it's fascinating. I think it's kind of jokey. It's like an intelligence report about the Volkssturm, so the People's Army, or the scraping the barrel basically for troops, older men mostly, younger kids, some of them. It's kind of like a jokey report in a way, but I don't know if it's entirely meant to be humorous. I got to go over it again. I found it again today, but I didn't read it again in detail. That was a while ago. So there's some discussion of them. One in the area of Veritable there, closer to the Rhine, how they just sit there and wait for the Canadians to come take them prisoners so they can go home. So they're not, a lot of them are not hardcore, and they're not going to fight. They're going to just hang out and wait, because if they go home, there'll be problems. But if they get taken prisoner and they know the Allies are just going to keep moving, it's not going to be a major issue. I mean, yeah, there's accounts of these things being carried out, but some of them are just fanatical because they're fanatical Nazis. That just happens, right? That's it. Like there's no rhyme or reason to go down like that other than in support of the cause. And that's what happens. I mean, some of this stuff is pretty intense. And I'm trying to get into more of the German sources as well, particularly in the Rhineland, because I found some more than I've been able to find for others. It's fascinating stuff. Sorry, just catching up. Yeah, sorry about the conference. I don't know. I'm still thinking about it. We'll see. I can talk to you again. Yeah, I think I saw those too. I mean, it's a big one. Grebstad's a big cemetery. I think I remember the Yugoslav one. Well, there's also a Polish cemetery there too in the Netherlands, and a Dutch. There's a lot. Anyway, they were observers as far as I was able to find out. As far as I know, because there's footage and photos of Soviet officers just watching First Canadian Army do stuff. So it's fascinating. Yes, he played for the Bombers, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And then gets killed at Operation Varsity. He's a fascinating guy to look at too. Yeah, I really appreciate the support. Thank you so much. Yeah, so any more questions, fire away. I can do about an hour total, so another half an hour or so. Anything else I missed? A conversation or chat leads to Monty in a lot of ways. Wow, he's in command. That's how that stuff goes. Yeah. Sorry to see if I missed anything again. Oh, thanks, Jim. I appreciate the support. It means a ton. Yeah, he does airborne. I don't know if he's doing anything airborne recently. Did a ton on it. My first Campera. Used that stuff for the Normandy stuff, and been to the varsity sites and all that good stuff too. So it's a good one to check out as well. He still does. Love or hate Monty, certainly galvanized opinions. Did then, does now. That's another one people will. That's connected to Market Garden. We were talking about that earlier, of how people just get so upset one way or the other. Monty's part of that, right? People will say, you say it's Monty's plan, which I have done. People get so upset. about it, saying it wasn't his plan, so therefore the failure is not his fault. And I go, well, technically, yes, it was his plan. And then it got taken away, and then why it failed is other people's faults, but it's broad strokes, so it should have worked. And I just don't really understand getting so upset about someone you've never met, who probably wouldn't have given two craps about you, because Monty was not the nicest person, let alone if he thought you were lower class. That's another thing. It wasn't always necessarily nationality. It was more of class than anything of who he hated and didn't hate. Big part of that that I think gets forgotten. But yeah, Monty is one that goes on forever. People will discuss him forever for who knows how long. But yeah, it's a topic that never ends. How many First Nation troops in Canadian military overall to World War II? Good question. We don't really know, for all kinds of reasons. Because I've been doing some research on this as another project, right? I'm trying to identify Indigenous members of Royal Rifles of Canada who fought in the Battle of Hong Kong. I've been working on that for a while now. I found some broad figures, several thousand, depending on which source and when that source is from, because of the identity around that, right? What does First Nations mean at the time? I mean, it's just called Indian at the time, and even that is fraught with all kinds of things, and that was an official status, but also had issues with how people were treated. So, and then mixed ethnicities, another thing that's not recorded at the time, because I've been working on that and finding stuff that's from later, and at the time there's really not much. It's a complicated question, and one I'm definitely literally working on. Looking at it and trying to understand it, and trying to understand how people lived and what the effect that had on people, and right, because they're all volunteers too, right? As far as we know, I don't think there's any. There probably is always some, right? There's always something or someone that proves the exception to the rule, or whatever the saying is. They're not supposed to have been conscripted, those with quote unquote Indian status at the time, but that probably happened. And then there's people of mixed ethnicity. We have Red River Métis people as well. Dave Grebstad is watching. So that it's got so much going on. And then you have even groups that are thought to be inside the United States of America as Indigenous groups, that people in Canada too, and that they came later, and some that came up to enlist in the Canadian Army just like other Americans did. And it's a couple thousand as far as we know. I mean, again, it's probably never going to have a clear number, but it's something I'm quite proud to be part of, and helping to figure this out, and trying to understand this, because it leads to all kinds of other areas as well, and understanding and identity. And it's not always just about, we have to give special attention to Indigenous people. It's to make up for what has happened, but it just opens up new avenues and new ways of thinking about this, and who people are, where they come from, what they dealt with. And I mean, that's the thing. I'm looking at these guys, and some of them have the exact same ethnicities and backgrounds, and they do not have the same personal experiences, not even close. And you would think sort of thing at that time, but it just wasn't the case. But there's going to be research coming out on that in the next little while as well, which I will tell people about when that all gets figured out. Yeah, there's some interesting ones with Monty period interviews. I mean, that's where the 90% successful comes from, is a post-war interview about Market Garden and the things he says, and contradicts himself, and I'm sure as any human would decades later, but it's just fascinating. What role was Canadian soldiers scheduled to participate in the planned invasions of Japan? So the Canadians are only supposed to be one division, and Tiger Force, which is basically 6th group, scaled down and then brought to the Far East. And then the naval involvement, I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head of what the plan was to go that way, because there was the whole thing with Uganda, a bit of a mess. But I think, I haven't looked at this recently, but I think the Canadian division, 5th division, 5th, whatever number they gave it, I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a division specifically training to go to the Pacific. 5th was in Italy, so I don't think it was the 5th. I'm thinking First World War was the 5th never entered combat. They are going to be part of the second landing on Operation Olympic, I believe, on Honshu itself, right? Because you have Coronet, which is supposed to be on Kyushu, I believe. I could be getting these backwards, but the Canadians are supposed to be part of the second one, so that's much later. Right, that's much later. I think that was scheduled for November 46 or something like that. So they're basically just going to be an infantry division inside of a Commonwealth force. And that's how it was going to go. And I mean, you see that later in Korea in smaller numbers, but it was going to be like an army group, basically, or a Commonwealth army, but on American lines, so a little different in terms of kit and organization and things like that. But that was what the plan was an infantry division. And I guess it would have been organized on the regimental combat lines or regimental combat teams used in the U.S. Army. I mean, I've seen tons of these documents, just never got a chance to read them in close detail because I'm supposed to be focusing on Hong Kong instead of this stuff because they just shove all the Pacific stuff together usually when it comes to the Canadian Army, just because there's so little of it. So it usually just gets shoved together, but just haven't had a chance to look at it in a long time. Not as far as I'm aware. No, there's no program like that. Nothing like that. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I mean, we know that there's Indigenous soldiers serving. I don't know if they may have used that as part of maybe something within a unit. I don't know, but no, there's no major program like they did with Navajo speakers in the Pacific. Nothing like that. So that's a whole other terrible decision to be done like that they made of basically booting anyone of Japanese ancestry off the West Coast for whatever it is, 300 kilometers or something like that, 200 kilometers from the coast or something like that. So yeah, there's Japanese Canadians who do enlist. There's no overall policy in the Army. There is in the Navy and the Air Force. There is exclusionary policies on the books that are sort of enforced-ish. Some African Canadians do enlist while this policy is in place in the RCAF somehow. They're not really sure how it happened, but it did. The Army has no official policy. It's basically because it's all done locally through the units anyway. They can do basically whatever the hell they want. Some of them did, some of them didn't. You got people from all over the place. Chinese Canadians, Japanese Canadians, Indian Canadians, subcontinent India. Also, I've seen Greeks. I've seen people from everywhere. Even more so in the First World War, which is interesting, but because we don't have all the data for the Second World War yet, right? Because we don't have the service records available for everybody. But there are people from everywhere, and not your stereotypical white places. It's more than you think. I know the story broadly, but I don't know the details, and probably something I should look at for more. Yes, yeah, 6th Division. Yeah, so the one on the West Coast is reconstituted with Hofmeister in charge. They don't really get anywhere with the training, right? They're supposed to have tons of time to do it. And it's not needed, luckily, for those involved. But yeah, it was Operation Olympic. So yeah, so it was Coronet first, again, and then Olympic. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of looking at reasons why this is, trying to stand out, trying to make themselves seem braver, to be taken, it's being seen as normal, quote unquote, just like everybody else. Lots of stuff along those lines. So that might explain some of that, and just general heroism as well. I mean, some of these people are just brave, but all humans are the same, as I always argue. So there's cowards everywhere, there's heroes everywhere, and brave people and all that stuff. So yeah, it would have been bad. My grandfather was supposed to go. To part of that force. So kind of glad that did not happen. Oh, Honshu, yeah. Oh, yeah, Olympics. Oh, see, I keep getting them mixed up. Anyway, yes, so it's supposed to go later. Or is Olympic before now? I don't know. Doesn't matter. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's one of the best. I argue. Sorry, kind of all over the place. Sorry, Stu. Good night in Scotland. That was a while ago. Sorry. Yeah, that book's fantastic. I say that's one of the best memoirs of the Second World War period. How it's done and the things that are discussed in there and all that stuff. I don't know, for some reason, the to me anyway, I don't know why, but the memoirs of the Pacific, and I don't even just the Americans, but are so visceral and so well done. I don't know what's up with that. Maybe it's just what I studied, but to me it's wild. Just hey, that would work. Still sometimes don't understand each other. Yeah, Pacific is great based on the sources, and I began looking at Iwo Jima as well. So I've been looking at Basilone as well because of his death there on Iwo, and the story and how the details are somewhat unclear sometimes. It's another one of those stories that I've been looking at. But yeah, it's a fascinating one, and because his service record's online, and I went through it, and it's a fascinating thing to read through, given his personal service, like his service and how he was in the army first and in the interwar period, and then joins the Marines later before Pearl Harbor, and then obviously with the VC, geez, doing Canadian stuff all day, and then with the Medal of Honor at Guadalcanal, and then him wanting to go back into combat, and then with his death, and his family doesn't really know what happened for a long time. And then, of course, as American policy, the families can bring their fallen loved ones home, which less than the Commonwealth never got even the opportunity or the choice to do so. So there's a lot of paperwork on that as well. I think we just lost the camera. Sorry, everybody. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, Cool War channel. Check them out if you haven't. Good stuff. Lots of different things to check out. Oh, hey, Susan. Thanks for joining us even for a little bit. Sorry about the camera there, everybody. Yeah, Acadian's different again, too. Actually, I can understand Acadians better than I can Quebecois for some reason. I don't know why. Okay, so I had them backwards. So it's Olympic first with Kyushu, fall 45, and then Coronet is March 46. Okay, so yeah, I think first 6th Canadian Division is supposed to be part of Coronet. Yeah. Mining in Honshu, I think. Anyway, yeah. Any more questions? Hang out for a little bit more. Sorry about those technical issues. Again, the green screen, I'm not enjoying how this is going and what it's doing to my computer. Sounds like it's going to explode. Yeah. See if I missed anything. Yeah, the Pacific series is a tough one and to watch, but this is all based on things that Sledge talks about and Lecky talks about in both of their books, and then the things that are documented around Basilone's actions at Guadalcanal, and then of course his death in Iwo Jima and those around him. It's just, I mean, for those who know the Pacific War, it's absolutely brutal. And the story, the Pacific series doesn't hold back on any of that at all, really. Yeah, it's nasty. That's a good question, Chris. As far as I know, it's the political reasons, right? How it was understood at home, in terms of the war starts against Germany, people sign up to fight Germany. You know, they're okay with fighting Japan while we're fighting Germany. But once Germany is defeated, they're going, what are we doing here? What's the point? There's not a lot of support for a war against Japan once VE Day comes. So that's why, right? That's why you only have the small parts of Tiger Force going. That's why they basically shrink 6th Group. And then the naval involvement is minimal. And then you have the things like Uganda happening, which, is a perfect example of why it doesn't go well. And that's another one I want to do, but that'll be coming later. That story is told, I don't know how many times over and over and over again, but the context is never given whatsoever at all. Like there is no context given in it, hardly any of these videos or anything like that. So you had to volunteer to go to the Pacific. Like they weren't just going to send people without their, willingness to do so. So they sent Uganda there without that. So they gave them the opportunity to vote on whether they wanted to be there, and they voted no. It's a fascinating thing to me. I mean, and it's just such a short period of time, right? Because the atomic bombings and the war. If it had gone on for a long time, who knows how that would have gone? I have no idea. Would they have sent in conscripts? I don't know. Who knows? It would have been a right mess, I think, here in Canada. What's happening with Greenhouse Canada next? No idea. Hope not. Yeah, they do amazing work. We have a similar thing here in Canada, not to the level even remotely at all of what the Americans do. I had Sarah on from the program here in Canada talking about it, and it's fascinating. It's just not as big, but I wish we did. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know if the Australians were going to send more because of proximity. But again, that's one I haven't looked at too much. But I think there was going to be a Commonwealth Army, so probably a handful. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, and of course there's American pressure, to stay out. I mean, obviously there's a British task force there that supports Okinawa. And the bombardment of the mainland and all that stuff. So it's part of it as well. Is the Americans like, we got this, to stay out of the way. They did take some help. So, I mean, Hampton Gray's Robert Hampton Gray's a Canadian, gets one of the last Allied personnel killed during the war, right, when he attacks a Japanese destroyer. He's Canadian, in the Canadian. I always get the name wrong. The reserve, part of Air Fleet Arm. So they're there, just in small numbers. Yeah, much more research needed. Yes, personally yourself. Yeah, that's right. They're in a strategic reserve. I'm sure they would have been needed right away, based on what we know. But yeah, they were supposed to be part of that as well. Yeah, it's a fascinating thing to look at, and there are files here in Ottawa that if I ever get the time to look at, I will do. Yeah, well, they had done that before, right? Like that had happened at Kiska, right? That was the how that went there, right? The Canadians were not organized as a brigade in the Canadian or Commonwealth style. They were organized as a regimental combat team. So, and they kept their battle dress, and they used everything else American, though. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, pretty sure. But yeah, the photos are fascinating from Kiska. So it had precedent. So I don't think it would have been an issue. I mean, in Korea we see a mix, right? I mean, tend to think of, in my own head, I tend to think of Korea as, seeing what Japan or the mainland invasion could have been organized on, right? American command and American numbers Then you have the Commonwealths, part of it, and then they're organized sort of similarly in the different ways, and it's just, yeah, it's obviously a different conflict, but I just like to think of these things and how people do stuff when you just get used to such one way, right, with things in Europe, and then it changes. Yeah, they did. They were part of the anti-aircraft screen mostly for that stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's part of it. With the vets, a huge chunk of them, right? Because that was the easiest way to do it, and they volunteered to do so because you had to sign up again specifically to go to Korea, which again was a bit of a mess. They didn't send the regular army at first, and then they did later anyway. It was a whole thing because that's the Canadian way of war: is let's make this difficult and send our people under-equipped. That's how we do things. But yeah, that was part of it as well, and just stocks of stuff. So they had it. Yeah. Yeah, it's a political issue. It's mostly political. It was a massively political thing, and you have two conscription crises. You have a plebiscite and all this stuff. And King's literally is, I call it. What did I call it in my dissertation? The sword of Damocles is even if an imaginary one for King, it's he literally is like staying up at night worrying about conscription, and like it's driving him crazy, and the conservative opposition was pushing for it, so he's kind of losing his shit over it all the time and freaking out and making a lot of decisions based on that alone, and he handled it masterfully, I'll give him that, but he was a bit of a, as I say, kooky dude, and this was no different. Yeah, that's it. And some of the people in Europe figured out they'll go home faster if they volunteer to go to the Pacific, because they figured it would take too long to get everything organized and ready to go. They obviously didn't know about the atomic bombs, but they thought it would take too long for anything to happen. They would just be discharged or sent home or whatever. And they were right. So played the long con on that one, and they wanted those with experience as well, right? That was initially one of the rules for signing up. Yeah, and that's a massive lesson learned from Hong Kong. And Jim Stone, big man. Literally, he was a large man, tall man. How he got through Ortona, I don't know. With being the size, I think he was around my height, 6'4" maybe, which is wild for the 40s. He says we don't want another Hong Kong. The government didn't want another Hong Kong, so they didn't, and they spent the time they needed to get acclimatized, and they did that properly, and I'd say it worked out pretty well. Yeah, I mean that's part of it. Yeah, it's a different war, and after 51 especially. Yeah, so you're just trying to hold the line basically. You can do it differently, and you can. What am I saying here? Trying to how you integrate your new people coming in, right? Because Canada drags its feet on what to do with Korea. I mean, the Americans are all in pretty much from the get-go. Britain too is not as much dragging their feet. There's a whole thing, because I just did a big project on this with Defining Moments Canada about Canada and the Korean War, and it's a fascinating one too. It's like the residue of King is still hanging over Saint Laurent's government and how to decide what we're going to do. He takes the King, playbook of don't really do anything and it'll work itself out in a way. And they eventually make the decision to set up a separate force, but it's going to be smaller and it's going to take time to be trained and done properly and all that kind of stuff. So by the time that the Canadians get there, yeah, the war is different in that way. And of course, the politicians have no idea what's going on half the time either. So fascinating stuff. Yeah, we don't do mobilization well at all in Canada, actually, ever. ever. Yeah, Cap Young is crazy, and it's just one of them. There's others too, but Cap Young is nuts. The numbers that they fight against, or think they fight against, we're never really going to get a real number. Fascinating stuff. Yeah, I've heard that too about the sleeping bags. The Americans get killed in them during training or something. Something like that. Oh no, yeah, it's during the Canadians training it happens. So they don't do that or something. I don't know if it's a real story or not, but I have heard that from multiple places. That's another one that could be looked into if I had the time. Yes, he was the Loyal Eddies, Ortona, commander of the battalion, and then CO of 2 PPCLI. Because he comes back. They bring him back, and then he's in brigade command as well in Korea. It's Scott basically saying the Chinese came in en masse. They weren't prepared to take those casualties to push them all the way back, and that's pretty much what happens. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The Brits dragged their heels for like a hot minute, not like Canada, but not as fast as the Americans. The Americans were claiming to be, Truman said he was taking his time, when I don't believe that at all. Oh yeah, he was not CEO of, he was a company commander at Ortona, and then becomes CEO later of the Loyal Eddies, and then works his way, then comes back for Korea, and then works his way up to brigade command. It was still the Lee Enfield in Korea. Yeah, those night raids are terrifying. Oh, night days, yeah. Jim Stone was a major at Ortona. Yeah, major. Chosen Reservoir. I mean, I can try to find someone with the expertise in that area. I don't. It's finding the time and the people. I've been having some trouble with finding time lately, to be honest. Trying to do more. It hasn't been easy. But I would love to cover things of Korea. I mean, I probably could get Cold War Channel on here, David, to talk about it, because he knows way more than I do. But maybe we could get him on to talk Korea, maybe. But yeah, I'd love to do, stuff on. I do stuff on the Marines myself, right, with Iwo and Pele Lu, and we had the look at Battle of Hue with Jason, and I do love covering that stuff. It's just that's one I don't know well at all. Thanks for the support, Jim. Much appreciated. It means a lot. Same, Purple Cat. Thank you. Yes, U.S. forces were in South Korea when the North invaded. Yes, that happened. Yes. I mean, the escalation and to bring more. That was not necessarily going to happen. They were going to leave, right? The plan was to pull out completely from South Korea. Obviously, they didn't. Obviously, the Cold War context plays into that. But to send in more happens very quickly, because I had to find this information, because I had to see what Canada's response was to American actions, and the Americans went quick, and it wasn't preordained that was going to happen, right? So yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, the destroyers, that was one thing that everyone was okay with sending right away in Canada. I really don't know. And I looked into this. I looked into, the records, Hansard, and some of the primary documents of some of these people. It's just, everyone seemed to be okay with sending the Navy. Everything else was kind of got everyone's backs up. I'm not really sure why, but the Navy was fine. Send the Navy, I guess. But, don't send the Army or the Air Force, just send the Navy. And the Air Force doesn't send combat squadrons to Korea. Just individuals, and then a transport squadron. I could be convinced. Yeah, we can get to make some time. Canadian expert Jason in urban combat, not specialization in the Marines necessarily, just urban combat. Yeah, that'd be fascinating. And McGalley is super fascinating. The Canadians in fighting in McGalley as part of the U.S. Air Force, and they're giving them command roles in this stuff, and they're World War II vets, and like it's just the stories are just bonkers. And then they deny them the American Flying Cross, and it's just the stories of that stuff are crazy. And I'm trying to do more with it for the Air Force stuff because I want to do more with the Foundation for Korea because it's just not discussed as much as it could be. I mean, you get little snippets, but I want to do more. It's just the McGalley stuff is so fascinating, and how the Canadians take to this kind of combat right away. I mean, they're flying the same planes they're flying as part of the RCAF. It's just how well they integrate and how quickly they do is just fascinating. Oh, wow. Chosen Reservoir Wing that is refrigerated. Well, that's appropriate. I still haven't been to that one. I need to get down there again at some point to see this stuff. Yes, he did. He pulled a MacArthur, I guess you could say, just like he did with the Philippines. Yes, it was occupation troops that they're ones that they send in quickly from Japan that make it so quick. And it causes all kinds of trouble with casualties, and then kind of scrambling to figure it out after that. Oh, thank you for gifting 5 memberships, David. That is much appreciated for the support. Thank you. Yep, Canadians are still there as part of peacekeeping operations, as they called it. Same with the Army. They're there too, holding the DMZ or establishing the DMZ, which is fascinating. Another fascinating part of this. Utterly fascinating, right? With what we know at the DMZ today and how things go. And at the time, if you crossed the DMZ, the North Koreans would like literally take you prisoner and then just wait a couple hours and then just let you go back. Like we did the same. It was wild. Like it was just this. Nobody was figuring. People were figuring it out, and it was still unclear and all this stuff. And now it's literally so blocked off that doesn't happen unless people run across it at the village there. But that's a whole other thing. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we did. I did know that, which was a mistake. It was not a good idea. Really, really bad idea. Those need to be elsewhere, but they wanted to be part of it. Wanted to, show the flag, as they say. Yes, they did. That's another thing I've kind of come to that conclusion. Is that they thought it was over after Incheon and how they pushed all the way up to the Chinese border. It was done. The Canadian government thought the same. This is why I've kind of come to that conclusion, is because they thought it was over. So what's the point of all of this? It's not going to go any further. The war is over. The Chinese won't get involved because they don't want to get nuked or they're too tired or whatever. They were all wrong. The same kit as the Second World War, basically. The only reason I can think of that is because so much, if you are talking about Korea, it's just because so much of this stuff is done behind the lines. And we have a little bit of troops. They're not in the line all the time like they were in the Second World War. The Canadians are always in the line. Korea, they're not always in the line, or there's a lot of prep being done. So as far as I can tell from the very limited amount I've seen in relation to Korea in my own stuff, it's a lot of it just the units are off the line. So they're able to get the photos of the time. And it's just not as a big operation for the Canadian Army, right? So there's just not as much as everything else, right? The film and photo unit in the Second World War is massive. In Korea, I'm not even sure how many people were sent over. It couldn't have been very many. Yeah, MacArthur, another controversial figure, gets fired. Yeah, humanitarian stuff. They're there for a good chunk of time, and part of it in places, and we're still on the agreement for Korea. So something that also does not get discussed, especially when the peninsula starts rumbling up again. Yeah, if any last minute questions here, I will do a little bit more. Yeah, so again, thank you for the super chats and the gifting of the memberships. It means a lot. If you can sign up for Patreon, that's the best way to help me, helps me the best overall, because they just take less than everybody else. It helps keep things going, and then I can spend more time on this stuff. And we can do all the things we discuss that you guys want. The more support I get, the more I can do, right? If you want me to do things like Chosen Reservoir, and Purple Cat, you're already supporting me. I'm not saying you specifically, but you know what I mean? Like, just the more support I have, the more I can do. It's just literally a numbers game here. Because if I don't, then I do other things, and that only 24 hours in a day, and I'm only one person. So yeah, a winning lottery number. Yeah, if I had it, I wouldn't be sharing it with anybody else. Yeah. Yeah, Fort Lewis in Washington, which is another fascinating story of how that's all organized and carried out and done, and crazy stuff. Yeah, let's give another minute for any more questions that might trickle in, because we're on the delay. Other than that, yeah, nothing scheduled as of yet. Got a few people who want to come on, talk about a few things, a few books that have come out or are coming out, following up on some other stuff that we kind of have set up for a part 2. We're going to do some of that, and we'll see how the spring goes and all of that. And I got a big project that's due end of March, so that's going to take up a good chunk of my time. And then hopefully I can do some more stuff looking at Canada and the Netherlands, right? That's a big story. That's a story that's told a lot. That's told a lot in terms of the feel-good stories, and as they should be told, because the Hunger Winter, which I've discussed at length and done videos on, and all that stuff is a good time to tell that. But there's a lot of nasty stuff in the Netherlands as well, of what goes on afterwards. There's a ton of reprisals, a lot of violence. I'm not saying it's not justified in a lot of ways. Some of it's not justified, though. We just don't see that. I'm not trying to, bring it down. I'm just trying to tell the history, because that's literally why I'm thinking this. Sorry, going on another tangent. Is because it's in the news most of the time. They weren't scared of talking about it in 45, but we won't talk about it now. I mean, I know why, but it's a lot going on, and it's just another area we look at, and that can use a little more, added to it, more robust look at things, instead of just stories that are feel good and waving flowers and flags and a guy supposedly taking a town by himself that probably didn't happen in any way, shape, or form that was claimed. Things like that. But yeah, sorry, what we have here? One more stuff on Canadians serving in NATO and Germany. Yeah, I'd love to do more of that. Again, I've been doing a ton of that with the Air Force, just because there's the photos from that stuff. It's crazy. Even the training exercises, the jets, the bases, it's awesome. And we have people who are there with us and still could talk about this, which is something I need to try and organize and do more on, because I'd love to do that and maybe collect some stuff. And I don't know. Lots to go on. Yeah, I could get Alex back on the channel to talk about the liberation of the Netherlands. Yeah, they did a whole issue with the Legion magazine. CF 100. Yeah, that's an interesting story. You can do the 105. Piss everyone off. Yeah, the clunk. It's the Canuck. Thank you very much. Oh, there's a lot of controversy about the writing. Oh, I can gather a guess, one or two, but I'm not really sure. Is it just the organization and because of unification is my guess? Anyway, tons of stuff there. Okay, I've been working since really early this morning, and my throat's starting to go on me. So, yeah, so thanks everyone for the sports. Thanks for hanging out. Love always getting a chance to just chat when I get some time and hang out and get even more ideas. I still got my list from the New Year's show about what to do and how to keep moving. And lots of things I could be doing. I wish I could do more. I really do. I try my best. So yeah, trying to do what I can on here on YouTube and get stuff out and get these stories told. There's just so many stories and one me doing this. So thanks everyone for the support, coming hanging out. Go watch some of the videos, please. I need those numbers to do better. That would be great. If my numbers on the videos could do more, that would really be helpful as well, to kind of get those moving. That would be fantastic. And there's more coming. You got some Iwo Jima stuff coming, so hopefully that will be more broad appeal because it's an American topic. And yeah, we can look at some more stuff as we move along. So other than that, have a good rest of your evening or early morning or wherever time you may be. But I will post some more videos of people to watch. All right, have a good night, everybody. Bye.